But hello, Blizz. Welcome back.
Hi.
It's like we never left. There definitely hasn't been a month and a half between the last recording and now.
Was it a month? Wait, it was a month.
It was like a month, maybe a month and a half. Oh, man, I put off researching. But I've been going hard. We're going to finish this up in the next probably couple weeks, so long as our schedules work. To start, just a warning to the viewer, to the listener. Do not listen to this episode until you've listened to episode 1. We're not really going to do an intro because we just did episode 1. We're just going right into it. So just a heads up. So Blizz, talking about P.T. Barnum, right?
My favorite guy.
One of the all-time greats.
Yeah.
He has been purveying his museum, right? And in the last episode, we kind of talked about the things that he was getting into in his museum, right? He had the Fiji mermaid, which was a still exhibit. It was a hoax. But he was also kind of dipping his feet into freak shows or exhibits of people, right? I don't know if you remember from last episode, to the listener as well, we talked about the Native American tribe that he actually housed in his museum to do, traditional dances, traditional ceremonies for patrons. And he was beginning to realize that this is where the money was, with these living exhibits, these human beings that he could exhibit that could put on a show. So after about a year of owning the museum and becoming progressively more successful, Barnum was about to unknowingly take the next major step in his career, which was international show business.
Are we getting closer to Zendaya or no?
Yes, actually, yeah, probably. Oh. Well, this one has nothing to do with Zendaya, but actually the one that this leads to, we're actually getting... I'm not going to spoil it. We're going to get into it.
Okay.
So November 1842, P.T. Barnum is now 32 years old, and he is traveling upstate to Albany, New York on museum-related business. After conducting his meetings, Barnum prepared to return home by a riverboat, but he was unable to do it when he found that the river had frozen over due to severe weather in this winter. In order to get home, Barnum instead had to board a multi-stop railroad, and his first stop was a little town called Bridgeport, and he had to stay there overnight. It was like an overnight stay. Bridgeport was a tiny community of around 4,000 people, and one would expect stopping there normally would be nothing more than an inconvenience. But Barnum was always looking for a new endeavor, and he didn't waste a second when he got just a tiny little whiff of a curiosity which he could add to his growing collection in the town of Bridgeport. While he settled into his hotel room on this stop, he remembered he'd once heard rumblings of a remarkably small child in Bridgeport. After some investigation, he found that seemingly every single person in town knew of a man named Sherwood Stratton, who had a son who was the size of a small doll and weighed no more than a pet dog.
Okay, this is giving this kid might die at the age of 10.
Yes.
Not to be, it's kind of concerning that he's that small.
Once again, we are looking at, you see this pattern with Barnum almost always in this period of his life where he is finding the most vulnerable person he possibly can to investigate. So, yes. The next day, Barnum was able to arrange a meeting with Stratton, who brought his boy to the hotel. The child was 25 inches tall and weighed 15 pounds. But despite his size, Barnum stated that the child did not look like he had a physical deformity. He was quoted as saying, "He was a perfectly formed, bright-eyed little fellow with light hair and muddy cheeks, and he enjoyed the best of health." The Stratton family, whose boy this was poor, and Barnum had money that he could throw at them and easily negotiate with them. So negotiations began.
This is child trafficking. This is selling a child. This is literally selling a child.
One could say that. One could say that. Yes. Now
it's textbook. This is textbook.
I am not standing up for Barnum. However, he was signed to a 4-week contract. He was signed to a contract. Okay. So it resembles something more like child acting, which
there's no
even
protective
to this
laws for this
even
child,
to this
though.
there are protective laws. Yes. Even to this day, not the best category. So it's still not good, but he did not buy the child. He purchased the child's services. The child remains in care of his parents, sort of.
Yeah, he purchased child services. Okay, cool.
No,
that's literally what you said. You said he purchased child services. That's wild.
So bad. But yeah, he paid him $3 a week, and he signed him to a 4-week contract. $3 a week, I looked it up, was about it was around like $100 for in today's currency.
$100 a week.
$100 a week for 4 weeks for him to perform a couple hours a day. Not great pay. Not great pay.
But they're like poor, so like
yeah, they're not well off, and they were happy to do it, right? Because it's they're both working, or at least the father is working, right? So this is just a little extra income. Unknowingly, though, this was about to begin the saga of one of Barnum's most famous sideshows of all time, the General Tom Thumb Midget Exhibition. Which obviously we don't use that word anymore, but that is the name that it was.
Are you allowed to say that?
I
Dude,
think
so. Canceled this.
I don't think I'm gonna get canceled for saying like. It's like when someone gets irate about not being able to say the N-word when they're reading Tom Sawyer.
It's N-words in Paris. What do you? I should be able to say it. It's the title of the song.
I don't get it, man. I just don't understand. So a little bit more about Charles Stratton. He's the child. He is the small child. He was born on January 4th, 1838, at a seemingly normal weight and size. It was 9 pounds and 2 ounces at birth, and quickly grew to 15 pounds and 2 ounces at 6 months of age. However, when the child was the same size of that 15 pounds at ages 2, 3, 4, and 5, his parents realized that he was probably going to grow up to be a little person. Accounts of the boy's childhood varied. Some said he was hidden away by his parents, who viewed him as some kind of affront to God and a punishment for their misloyalty to God. And other accounts said that they pampered the boy and he was a favorite of his parents. It's kind of up in the air. He didn't really talk. I didn't find any reports of him talking about this later in his life. But they said that other reports said that he was allowed free reign around town, where he became a beloved figure, which I am kind of tempted to believe, because it seems like when Barnum was asking around, everybody knew who he was, right? So it sounds like his parents actually treated him pretty well. And throughout the rest of the story, it seems like that was the case as well as you can treat a child who you're exploiting for monetary gain.
Yeah. Well, how old was he when Barnum approached him?
He was 5 years old.
He's making business deals. His parents.
He is a young mogul. How are we going to be mad at a young boy getting his bread up? Like, I can't be upset.
It's not him getting his bread up. It's his parents getting his bread up. That's what's different.
It's true.
It'd be okay if he was like 23 or something.
Yeah,
I'd be like, okay, I get it.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
Like,
that's true.
He is 5 years old. What was your business like when you were 5? Mine was going to kindergarten. So
I think mine was going to kindergarten and like therapy. That was all I was doing at like age 5. Yeah. Anyway, Barnum arranged a 4-week contract, and while Charles's father remained in Bridgeport to work, Cynthia Stratton, his mother, brought the 5-year-old to New York on December 8th, 1842. And was immediately repulsed by the way that Barnum was advertising her son. According to the handbill, which was advertising the tiny boy's exhibition, he was not Charles, but instead renamed General Tom Thumb, a dwarf of 11 years of age, just arrived from England. However, Barnum was quickly able to calm her down by explaining his reasoning behind advertising her son this way. Barnum had found the name Charles Stratton to be too boring as an exhibit, and he knew something more mystical to grab the attention of the masses. So he grabbed the name Tom Thumb from Arthurian legend. In these stories, Tom Thumb is one of King Arthur's knights who lives in a tiny golden palace with a 1-inch door, and he's driven around in a cart pulled by 6 mice. It's like the classic little person from literature. In terms of changing Charles's age, because he was being advertised as an 11-year-old, not a 5-year-old, which he currently was, Barnum felt that the average dullard would not truly understand how small Charles was for his age. If he said that the child was 11 instead of 5, it would be immensely clear, even to the simplest of folk, that he was truly remarkably small, and they could even compare their own children against him. Finally,
smart. I hate how smart he was.
Barnum is like, there's a reason he's the father of modern advertising. He is like a master level psychologist for being just like a dude that grew up as a clerk at a shop. It's
what
unreal.
Form of mental illness does he have to get that though?
I don't know because he not that, you know, like it's interesting. It is very interesting. Like it's really weird because every time I try and pin him down of like, oh, he's probably a sociopath. Oh, he's probably this, and this. He is like not. He has these random flashes of being really empathetic and really nice to some people and not to others. And you would immediately think like, oh, we're in the 1800s. So he's probably like biased and based on socioeconomic class or race or something. It doesn't seem like there's no like through line of who Barnum likes and who he doesn't like. It's really weird. He treats some people really well, some people really poorly. And it's not always tied to the things that you would think it is. He's a really complicated figure, even though he's a bad person. Because the things that he does that are bad are like unforgivably bad.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But it's really interesting. So he's doing this advertising, and finally he rebranded the boy as an import from England because he knew that this was something that he did all the time, advertising something as being from overseas, like his plate juggler Vivala, who was Italian, who he said was, I think he said he was Cuban, was always more mystical to the American public. It enthralled his audiences when he had something from far, far away, because travel was even more inaccessible then than it was now.
Did they not know the difference between Italian and Cuban? I'm sorry. That's
no.
I forgot about that.
I was re-listening to last episode when I was preparing for this one, and we talked about there was no explanation why he rebranded Vivala as not Italian. I think he rebranded, like Barnum rebranded him as Cuban. I'm assuming it's because there was Italian bias in like the general public. And yes, I doubt they would be able to tell the difference.
Okay.
I doubt they'd be able to tell the difference between an Italian and a Cuban. You know, brown boy with the beard. What are they gonna do?
What did the Italians do? Brown boy with the beard. What did the Italians do?
Italian resentment in like the 1800s was like genuinely pretty bad. Like it was not like systematic in the way that like obviously like it was against actual brown people. But they hated those motherfuckers. Irish and Italian people had it pretty tough in like the 1800s.
Oh, that probably explains like some drama with New York or something in Italians.
Yeah, it's something of that nature. And then the Irish, you had a bunch of English immigrants, right? So like you had the English immigrants despising English people, just don't like the Irish and vice versa. So you had that, you know. So Barnum had crafted this backstory for Tom Thumb. However, as he had learned from his previous exhibits, specifically the ones that had popped off super hard, such as the Joyce Heth exhibit, these exhibits could not succeed with backstory alone. You couldn't just come and look at the wonder. That would not create a long-term effect on an audience. So Barnum needed his little man to be an interactive part of the experience. So he got to work on educating the boy to be the best performer he possibly could. Stratton's family was installed in the same converted billiard parlor that Barnum's wife Charity and 3 children were currently living in, while Barnum worked day and night grooming Charles into General Tom Thumb. He worked with the boy all day, all night, to make him the perfect performer, and he said that Charles made extremely quick progress as he was an, quote, apt pupil who had a keen sense of the ludicrous.
Okay, so a word that you used that you shouldn't have was grooming.
So grooming can is often used to be sexual. To what I read, that is not the case here.
I know, but like after saying child services and then you use the term grooming, it's just like it's not looking good. Like, it's really not looking good here.
Look, I'm not going to not assume that Barnum might have been doing the worst. I'm not accusing him of it, but grooming is used to say, like, when you are working, you know, it can be not nefarious in its use. It just is because
grooming.
we're in the Minecraft space. So
oh my God, Jesus Christ! I played Minecraft one time.
That's
my guy.
the first thing that we think.
Speaking of grooming, I'm going to close my window real quick because my apartment complex is doing yard work, and so you might hear an air blower or something. What are they called? Leaf blower, air blower.
They're grooming the yard.
They're grooming the yard. For their yard services. Great.
Feel free. Go close your window.
I already closed it.
Oh, you did it? Okay. All right. You didn't have to get up. Anyway, Barnum then did a media tour with General Tom Thumb on the eve of his debut, making Tom dance on a newspaper editor's desk and another newspaper editor's dinner table in his home. And this delighted the New York media. They gave Barnum and Tom ample hype for their upcoming debut. The lecture room inside of Barnum's museum, which, as you may remember from the last episode, was now basically a personal theater, was packed to the brim the next day, and the show began. 5-year-old General Tom Thumb opened the show with a monologue containing a series of size-related puns, followed by some banter with Barnum. Barnum would then end their back and forth by inviting a different child on stage to compare their size to Tom. The child was always larger, which awed the audience and prepared them for the meat and potatoes of the event. Tom Thumb would perform a variety show where he would cast himself as a series of different characters throughout the main performance. 1 minute, he had a bow and arrow and was leaping around the stage as a mini Cupid. Next, he was a tiny Revolutionary War soldier waving a 10-inch sword and singing Yankee Doodle. Later, he was King David from the Bible facing off against a fictional battle with Goliaths, which were two abnormally tall men, which Barnum had actually had as other separate exhibits in the museum. So he had these very tall people dressed in biblical garb along with General Tom Thumb, and they would stage a battle with one another. A tiny gladiator was next in the rotation, and finally, the show was capped off with a performance of Tom Thumb playing the role of Napoleon Bonaparte.
This is great. This is a good time. I mean, hey, child performers, they're really, I don't know what to say about this. I really don't. I just don't like P.T. Barnum, and I don't like how this story is going already. So, like, yeah.
It's you might not like it. You might not like it. The public loved Tom Thumb, though. Overnight,
because
Tom
the public
Thumb
is also an issue too. Like yeah. Sorry,
you
the public's
say
pedophiles. I'll say it. I don't care. Next question.
Maybe that's why they enjoyed it. Because overnight, Tom Thumb was the hottest attraction in New York City. Elected officials, businessmen, and common folk alike. Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm stopping. This is no different than a family YouTube channel. I'm not saying like this is literally just a family YouTube channel, and it's like, yeah, well, people like this, and it's like, no, they don't. Like kids don't understand what content is like. And the show business and entertainment business.
It really is. It does have a lot of parallels with modern entertainment, which is kind of scary to see how little the exploitation of children has changed in entertainment. Not great. But that didn't matter to Barnum because he was making buku bucks, all right? Elected officials, businessmen, and common folk all came to see him perform in the lecture hall with General Tom Thumb every day from 3 to 7 p.m. Barnum was overjoyed as the popularity of this exhibit ceased to wane over the following weeks, and he finally agreed to a 1-year contract with Tom Thumb's parents at double his previous salary, which was now at $7 a week, which is closer to $300 a week. After 6 months, Tom Thumb was then being paid $25 a week, which was closer to $1,000. So now Tom Thumb is kind of getting paid close to a livable wage. That's $4,000 a month that he's making for his family. It's kind of incredible. And Barnum is just offering more and more and more because he's bringing in a lot of money. Tom Thumb was by far Barnum's most popular exhibit up to this point in his life, and one that he could easily market to a larger audience than any of his other oddities. So he began thinking larger scale. Why settle for more money at home when world domination was possible thanks to his little general? General Tom Thumb was now preparing for an overseas tour, and Barnum was about to endeavor on making him a worldwide exhibition, starting in Europe. He knew that taking the Stratton's Boy Abroad would be a hard sell to them as parents, So he came to a lucrative agreement with them for their son's services. Tom Thumb would be paid $50 a week, not almost $2,000 a week. And his parents would be traveling alongside him in Europe, along with a tutor to continue his schooling while he was on the road. So all expenses paid for the entire family to go to Europe, $2,000 a week in salary for Tom, and a tutor to continue his schooling. Tom Thumb's father, Sherwood, figured he would also get in on the business, and he chose to work as a ticket seller for his son's exhibition, quitting his current job, which enriched the family even further. Barnum also secured his name at home, making sure that people didn't forget about him. First, he brought along naturalist Professor Guillaudou, who was currently working at his museum. His goal, it's close.
Guillotine.
It's very close. We're close to the revolution here. We're close to the revolution.
Tom Thumb started the revolution. Then
maybe he could have been one. There's that butterfly effect thing, right? Where like Tom Thumb performing in France
war?
Could have started. Well, it was not a bloodless revolution. It was a revolution. Hey, look.
Is he Les Mis?
It was a good war. Sort of, the outcome was good.
You being on the side of war.
The outcome was good. It was a revolution, not a war. All right, let it be known.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
You're getting canceled this episode. I'm actually really.
It's
happy
already
to watch
over.
This.
It's already over.
You can just bleep the entire episode. It's just gonna be like an hour bleep.
It's just one censor sound. Oh man. So he brought along this naturalist, and his goal was to put Guillaudou to work finding new oddities in Europe to bring home while Barnum was busy exhibiting Tom.
Sounds like a Pokemon, Guillaudou. It sounds like
he does sound like a Guillaudou. He sounds like a little like grass water type, like a little Guillaudou, and it's like a little I don't know, it's like a little chestnut or some shit. Yeah.
It's a chestnut or some
cute.
shit.
Water chestnut.
Leave C-Dot out of this.
It'd be
Leave
cute.
C-Dot
That's
out of
true.
This.
It is. But I see him as a C-Dot type character, So while Barnum, this guy was looking for new oddities while Barnum was exhibiting Tom, and Barnum also took a position as a foreign correspondent for the local newspaper, the New York Atlas, to keep his name constantly in the hearts and minds back home with regular newsletters from his trip to Europe. So, now with all of this established, Barnum and his troops set off for Liverpool, England on January 18th, 1844, and landed 19 days later. Barnum had made no advanced plans for this exhibition, which was kind of crazy. He was fully winging it. I was kind of shocked when I read this because Barnum is usually a pretty meticulous planner. He's usually way ahead of the game, planning on advertising ahead of time, but like months before he would do exhibitions. He had a really good content pipeline. So it's really weird he did this. There was no explanation why. I don't know what he had going on.
Maybe because he kind of has an ego about himself. Maybe he thought he was him and this was okay to just do. Like he felt comfortable. I
think you're right because he had a really slow start. And it was actually really hard for him to find anywhere to exhibit Tom Thumb. It was looking kind of dire. And he was actually, I read in the book, he was having like an existential crisis of like, oh shit, it might be over. Like this actually might be it. However, the manager of the Princess Theatre in London finally offered Barnum a long-term contract for the Tom Thumb exhibition. It was like a year-long contract. However, now that Barnum had the wheels were turning and he had the confidence of an offer, he took a bet on himself. And he thought that he could use this offer to drive up prices to other offerers in the future. So what he was going to do was take this offer, present it to the public, and do a small tester exhibit. He agreed to a 3-day contract with the manager instead of the 1-year contract, and the manager agreed. Barnum and crew headed to London, where they were going to be doing their first exhibit. And to Barnum's expectations, the show was an instant smash hit. He knew he could make ridiculous money in this untapped market, but he was already swimming in it at this point. He'd hit the ceiling when it came to the money he could actually make. So what he wanted more with this exhibition was international acclaim, mogul status. He remembered the example that the Turkish chess-playing automaton had taught him, which was to do influencer marketing, exhibit to royalty, exhibit to nobility, and exhibit to the ultra-wealthy. That is how you reach the next level. Barnum wasn't quite ready for that, though. The most notorious figures in the world were used to seeing oddities in exhibitions. They were presented with them every single day. The best entertainment in the world was thrown at them regularly. If Barnum wanted to actually make his exhibit stand out, he had to catch someone at the right time and with the right status. And he was willing to wait for that. After doing a few more small exhibitions of Tom in England to drive up hype about him, the day finally came. Barnum was called upon by the American minister to England, Edward Everett, who gave him a tip that 25-year-old Queen Victoria was in a bit of a sour mood, mourning the recent death of her father-in-law. She was likely looking for something to take the edge off a little bit while she was mourning. So Barnum got to work. Everett gave him an in, and Barnum began doing the rounds with people close to the Queen. He presented Tom Thumb to baronesses, aristocrats, and employees of the Queen directly. Finally, the day came. Barnum and Tom were performing at the Egyptian Hall in the center of London when a member of the Queen's Guard arrived and handed Barnum a note, inviting him and Tom Thumb to appear at Buckingham Palace before Her Majesty. He was instructed to not refer to the Queen by any titles of royalty or reverence, as she wished to see him perform as he would anywhere else without restraint.
So like call her Vicky instead of like...
Yeah, you know, he had the
Queen
Vicky pass.
Victoria.
Yeah.
Hey, Vicky, it's my girl.
Yeah,
It's good to
yes.
see you.
Yes, all informal, right? He's out there,
Yeah.
he could catcall her if he wanted to.
He probably would, too. He probably
Barnum
would.
absolutely would, yes. And as would Tom Thumb, because Tom Thumb was a student of Barnum.
He's grooming a bad person.
Some of the stuff he was making Tom say was unreal. It was crazy.
And stuff.
Not to my knowledge, not slurs. It was mostly just more adult humor.
I feel like probably it's a slur. I mean, language has transformed so much that they could have said something like way back then that wasn't, but like now they were just saying the N word left and right.
Probably. It was probably just considered so normal that it wouldn't stand out, right?
Yeah.
So the night of this performance to the Queen, Barnum, the tireless advertiser, put a sign up at the Egyptian theater where he had currently been exhibiting Tom that read, "Closed this evening. General Tom Thumb being at Buckingham Palace by command of Her Majesty." When they finally got to Buckingham Palace, the performance went off without a hitch. And even when there was one, it actually worked in the favor of Barnum and Tom. They did their normal shtick for about an hour to the delight of the Queen and about a dozen members of the nobility, and their irreverence was beloved. Barnum and Tom Thumb were instructed to never speak to their queen directly, but if they wanted to speak to her out of character, they had to talk to a lord-in-waiting who would then pass the messages to her. So this is how it worked I don't know if this is how it still works in English nobility, but you basically have a dude who, even if the Queen can hear you, you talk to him first. You say, "Can you ask Your Majesty if she enjoyed the show?" And then he would turn around and be like, "Did you enjoy the show, Your Majesty?" And that was the only way you were allowed to communicate. They tried doing that. And for a while, it went well, but then Barnum got annoyed with it because it is really annoying to have to talk to someone and then wait for them to pass their message and then have the response been given you. It is good. Good stream idea, right? Taking chat messages and having them read by another person, and then that person passes them to you.
Crab, what are you doing later? What are you doing later?
That's a good idea.
I might need someone to read my chat real quick.
That might bang, actually. They try doing this. They drop the act quickly. And the Queen is not offended. Normally this is something that would really upset the Queen and they would get you kicked out of the royal court. However, she wasn't offended at all and allowed them to stay, even though they were talking to her directly. Finally, upon exiting the show, Barnum and Tom were instructed to walk backwards down the corridor and out the door, never turning their back to the Queen. Again, another royal ceremony. Tom Thumb's legs failed him in keeping up with Barnum when he was walking backwards. So every few seconds he would fall behind, and he would realize this and turn around entirely from the Queen, sprint so he could catch up with Barnum, but then turn back around and start walking backwards again so that he would still respect the royal decorum. However, when he started running, eventually this agitated the Queen's poodle, who barked at Tom Thumb as a warning. This scared Tom Thumb.
Does he have a fear of dogs?
He might. I don't know. It didn't say if he did. But what he did when the dog barked at him is he ran over and attacked the poodle. And you would think, oh no, it's over. It's over. Well, he attacked the Queen's dog. But they were kind of play fighting. The dog took it as an initiation of play. And the entire royal party thought it was hilarious. They thought it was hilarious seeing this little poodle fight this little man. They saw it as an entertaining endeavor.
Okay, sorry, your initial response to a dog barking at you is attack, which again, he's like 11, right? Or he's like 5?
At this point, it's like, what, a year later? He's like 6.
He's 6? I that is bold. That is bold for a 6-year-old to do. To like, a dog is barking at me, I'm gonna fight this dog.
Yes, okay. When I read that, I was shocked, and I was like, "Oh, it's over." And then I realized, like, nope, they actually loved it. Actually, they probably didn't give a shit about the dog's well-being at all. They probably thought that shit was hilarious. Anyway, it goes well. The Queen clearly had taken a liking to Tom, and he was invited back for a second and then a third show. The third show not only included Queen Victoria in its audience, but also King Leopold of Belgium. So now the talk of Tom Thumb was spreading. King Leopold of Belgium, possibly one of the most evil people of all time. Up there. He is up there. He is genuinely up there with the Hitlers and the Mussolinis of the world. What did he do? He killed 10 million people in Congo, at least.
Oh my God.
Belgium in this era of history is legitimately one of the most evil powers in world history. Huge genocide in the Congo because of King Leopold.
Fucking Christ.
Anyway, he had a reputation at the very least, and Tom Thumb's influence was spreading. The exhibitions at the Egyptian Hall were blowing up as well, not just these private shows. Because of the notoriety he had gained with the Queen and was gaining with international royalty, Tom Thumb's exhibitions were packed at the Egyptian Hall. And now Barnum and Thumb were also performing at other private parties and making over $500 a day at their normal exhibition. It was more money than any of them had ever seen before, even Barnum at his museum. After the success in England, they moved on to Paris and delighted King Louis Philippe. Barnum had expected success in Paris, but was overwhelmed when Tom Thumb's popularity greatly succeeded even his expectations of success. He was a bona fide celebrity in Paris. The media covered his every move. He had paparazzi following him everywhere. Someone had named a cafe after him. His face was plastered across product advertising everywhere. Billboards, cans of chew, cigarettes. His face was everywhere. He was a celebrity. He was a icon in Paris for whatever reason.
The Sabrina Carpenter of oddities.
Yes, kind of. Yeah, you start seeing the genuine celebrity start to form that we are familiar with in the modern era. Which is kind of interesting because I didn't really know that people reached that level of celebrity unless they were a royalty or something back in this day. So it's interesting. His shows in Paris were sold out 2 months in advance.
Oh my God.
2 months in advance you had to wait.
This is a Beyonce concert?
Basically, this is the equivalent. Yeah. It's nuts.
He is Beyonce.
So after about a year in France, Tom and Barnum moved to Spain, then Belgium, then one more time back to England. With success everywhere they stepped. 3 years had passed since they'd come to Europe, and the legwork was done. It was finally time to return home as international superstars. So you'll remember, it was supposed to be a year-long contract when they went to Europe. Ended up being 3. So they made a shit ton of money, and they stayed there till Tom was about 8 or 9. After this, Barnum continued milking the little person act as much as he could. He hired more little people. He had little people that ended up getting married to one another in his museum, and he did this for a long time. He remained friends with Tom Thumb. Tom Thumb became very successful on his own. Had a gigantic property. Lived to be. I forgot what it said that he actually passed away, but I think he lived into his 70s. He ended up living a long, relatively fulfilling life. And him and Barnum, he started performing independently, and Barnum gave him advice on how to perform, and he did fairly well. So this is why I said Barnum is complicated, right? Because that it definitely was child exploitation, but then it was good in the long term. So
he probably saw him like a son or something. That's probably what was different.
I actually don't think Barnum had any sons at this point either. I believe all of his children were girls. So I think he eventually did have a son, but it's all girls at this point. So I could see it being that. Yeah, it seemed like he had a good relationship with Tom. So Barnum returns from this European expedition. He's ecstatic to use this newfound international acclaim to turn his museum into a synonym for American entertainment. It was already providing him passive income while he'd been overseas. So it was time to put even more into it and turning into an unrelenting machine of commerce. What he did, he went back to the owners of the building and he secured a 25-year lease on the building at a great price by threatening to build a brand new building and moving out. And He, of course, led his museum's marketing blitz with General Tom Thumb, his hottest attraction, who performed to packed audiences inside the museum's lecture room every single night. Because of the fame of this show, there was high demand for Tom Thumb to perform across the country. So Barnum decided that it was time for a domestic tour after the international tour. They did a short tour in Philadelphia, Boston, Buffalo, Havana, Macon, Mobile, and New Orleans, as well as putting on private showings for people of notoriety like President James K. Polk.
Where's Havana?
Cuba.
Oh.
I believe that American relations with Cuba in this era were much more neutral at the very least than they are now, because there's a lot of mentions of people going to and from Cuba in this era.
Why was Camila Cabello singing about Havana? Is she Cuban?
She's Cuban, yeah.
Could have fooled me.
Just saw the name Cabello and was like, oh, that's a Mexican. That's what you thought, Blizz? That's what you thought?
No, that's not what I thought. Okay. Before you get your Mexican American ass on me, that's not what I thought. Hold on, chill.
It's okay. She's super racist. We can get her ethnicity wrong.
I think she had an apology letter or something about.
I think she had to go to an anti-racism camp. Wasn't that a thing? She checked herself into an anti-racism camp. It wasn't like a course. It was like a camp. I remember hearing about this. Anyway, that might be misinformation. She learned. We'll see.
No, it's proper information. We're the media now.
Yeah, what can I say? Yeah, we are the media now. You're right. You're right. Oh, man. Barnum knew, however, that putting all of his eggs in one basket with the Tom Thumb exhibit was not going to be sustainable forever. There was a point where it would not be as popular as it is now. So he began his dive into another endeavor, which became one of his most famous.
Selling cocaine.
Yes. He started the United States drug trade. Yes, that is true. Mm-hmm. This one was not as internationally successful or as monetarily successful, but it was very influential into culture as a whole. And that is the freak show. Over the following months, Barnum scouted far and wide for freaks he could have exhibited at his museum. He had seen the success of Tom Thumb. It's Zendaya. She finally makes her first. Yes, she comes in. Yes.
It's Zendaya. That's all we care about, dude. That's all we care about. We're just waiting
for how does P.T. Barnum lead to Zendaya's success? How does this contribute to Zendaya's legacy?
And then she releases Challengers, and then Challenger Summer is a whole thing, and then it's a great
and then Barnum gets
everyone.
He's questioning his sexuality. He's like, am I bisexual? And yeah, there's a whole
my best friend.
Yeah.
Confusing times.
It's crazy. So he finds what he considers freaks. There is a blind black pianist who has an innate understanding of music, which allows him to emulate songs from after hearing them one time. There's a black inventor who has this weed, and he carries this.
When the word black came out.
I did?
Yeah, you went.
I'm not laughing. No, you'll see.
Dude. Okay, all right, I'll trust you. But you did laugh when I laughed because you said black pianist. And I was like, that's funny. I registered. I was like, oh, he's black and a pianist. Okay, that makes sense. I thought you meant the piano was black, and I was like, okay, cool.
No.
Why do I need to know that?
No. It was a black man.
Okay.
The next one is a black inventor who has a weed that he carries around. This is this plant, this fern-looking plant, which he says would turn any colored person white. Barnum pitched this shtick as Barnum picked this race-bending weed as the solution to slavery, and he exhibited this guy as the slavery cure, basically. Next up was a giantess named Anna Swan, who was conventionally attractive, well-educated, and 7 feet 11 inches tall and 413 pounds. After her was young Herman, who was an inflationist who would expand his chest to nearly double the size of its volume. And the next one was one of Barnum's most famous freak shows. It's something that appears in media all the time to this day. It is Madame Josephine Fortune Clofulia, who was the original bearded lady. Yes, she is the original bearded lady. Really interesting because this is another really interesting case because they present her as a freak, which is, obviously an issue. But she's one of the best treated shows of any of the performers from both Barnum and in her personal life. Born Josephine Boldeschain in Versoix, Switzerland, she first grew her beard at age 8, with it gradually increasing in length and density over the years. Yeah, I know. 8 years old growing a beard, like AFAB is crazy. But even being AMAB, like growing a beard at age 8 is unreal. That's wow. She had already been exploited at a young age by French exhibitors who had taken her on tour around the country. However, despite being presented as a freak, she still found a loving husband who married her before they came to America, and she had, I think, 2 or 3 children with him as well. As you know, Blizz, as we just said, the bearded lady has become a staple of carnivals and sideshows throughout history, and this is in large part due to Madame Josephine's success with Barnum. She was a pioneer in this space of oddities, and she probably would not have had her notoriety and become a symbol of the carnival or the sideshow had she not caused a bit of a legal stir in Barnum's museum. One day during her exhibition, a customer named William Charr took offense to her. After attending the exhibition, he went to police because he was convinced that Barnum was swindling him, that this beard was not real. It was just a woman wearing a wig. So he went and filed a lawsuit against Barnum for swindling. Fun fact, swindling, real crime to this day. I got scammed.
I'd be arrested. I would be arrested immediately, dude. Pretty bad.
I got scammed 2 weeks ago, and I had to file a police report, and the cops were looking at each other while I was talking to them, and they're like, yeah, I think we file it as swindling. It's that's real?
Wait, you got you're real? You're telling the truth right now that you got scammed?
Yeah, I got scammed. I had to go to the police station. Yeah.
What'd you get scammed?
Somebody scammed me for. Okay, so I traded this Nintendo Switch to this guy for some DS games, and when I got in the car, I always check. I didn't check this time. Every single game he traded me was fake. It was like $400 worth of shit. That I was like, damn, that sucks.
Well, you should have just killed him or follow him in his car.
True, that would have been better than going to the cops. I would have probably been more humane. So this guy gets upset, right? He thinks he's been swindled by Barnum. He paid 25 cents to get in, and he thinks that this is a fake exhibit. This is like striking gold for Barnum, right? He lets the guy take him to court. No problem. As he knows, Josephine is a woman, and he now had the opportunity to use this court case as one big advertisement for her exhibition in his museum. So in July 1853, the Tombs Court in New York heard the case of Charr v. Barnum. Barnum personally attended the trial with a team of reputable physicians in New York who confirmed that Josephine was indeed female and that her beard was well within reality when it came to physical abnormalities. The Madame's family was also in attendance, with both her father and her husband confirming that she was in a straight marriage and had borne children. Finally, Barnum had sealed the deal by having the court doctor inspect Josephine before the trial, confirming to the court again that she did indeed have a vagina. The case was quickly dismissed. Barnum did not countersue because Charr had already given him everything that he had ever wanted with the money and free advertisement that he could have gotten through a lawsuit. Word of the trial leaked to a local newspaper editor, and the case went viral. People flocked every day afterward to see the bearded lady. She became cemented in American history as a staple of the sideshow. However, even the bearded lady was not Barnum's most famous freak exhibit, as his most famous creation has found itself to be a term now included in the dictionary that did not exist prior to this. That show was the Siamese twins. Twin boys, Chang and Eng, were born in Meklong, Siam, a small village near Bangkok. For those of you that
the Avatar. No.
One is Zuko, one is the Firebender, one is Aang. The Airbender.
And they hated each other.
These guys actually
because they both wanted to date the same girl. Let's be honest.
It's so over.
Which I will say, Zuko Katara fans, you're valid. I'm with you. I stand with you.
+2. I haven't watched the show.
Katara.
So +2. I agree. Yep. I've been saying this. I really need to watch that. I've heard it's really good. So for those of you that are listening, Siam is modern day Thailand. That's what Thailand used to be called. Despite being dubbed the Siamese twins due to where they lived, the two, Chang and Eng, the brothers, were of Chinese descent. From birth, they were conjoined by a thick, fleshy ligament covered in skin connecting their lower chests. The ligament was short and held them face to face early in life, but eventually grew to about 5 inches in length and stretched a bit, which gave them a little bit more room to independently exist from one another. The ligament was sensitive to the touch, being felt by both boys, but firm enough that if one of them tripped or fell or pulled a little bit, it would not rip or tear, but support the weight. One day, after the boys' father had passed away, when they were around 19 years of age, an American sailor named Captain Coffin, insane name, spotted the boys swimming in a river near the village. With dollar signs in his eyes and a vulnerable widowed mother with whom he could negotiate with, he made a deal. A contract was signed, and the boys traveled with him back to England to begin a career as the Siamese Double Boys. And from a Barnum perspective, the best part of their show was it drew controversy. There were rumblings constantly around England that these boys were not genuinely conjoined twins, and that their exhibition was a simple hoax. Barnum knew this song and dance really well. Any talk about your exhibit was good talk. Every controversy was just an opportunity to publicize your event. When he heard the word about their growing notoriety in England, he quickly made arrangements to buy out their contract from their current exhibitor, Captain Coffin, and returned with them to the museum in America. Chang and Eng, as Barnum learned, had also gained a reputation for their striking differences in temperament. You actually hit the nail on the head earlier, Blizz. They actually did hate each other. Which I can't really see there being much of another outcome. If I was with anyone all the time, I think I would despise them, no matter who they were.
Yeah, I think all twins secretly hate each other.
Yeah, right. And then if you're like forced to be next to them all day every day, it's I imagine that is amplified, right?
Yeah. Well, how old were they? Like during this experience?
They were 19 when they first traveled to England. I think they were there for like 2 or 3 years. So they're mid-20s.
Okay. Well, mid-20s is different. They probably hated each other just growing up in general and just didn't process that whole like why we hated each other.
Yes.
Type of ordeal.
Yes. And it was likely resentment of their situation. There's a lot of different things that could come out of it. So Chang was the older of the two. He was slightly shorter and he was on the left side of the twins' body. And he enjoyed wine and womanizing. He was a bit of a partier.
I'm sorry, wine and womanizing? You said that way too lightly.
No other details. That's all it said.
Womanizer? That's
what it said. It said he got it like that.
Is that okay?
I don't know. That's all it said. There was not much.
Thing?
No, it's not a bad thing. It's just to his brother, it was a bad thing.
Because his brother was gay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, Womanizer I thought was bad because I was thinking of the song Womanizer.
Oh, sure. I mean, it can be bad, right? Because it just means you're like a player, right? It's more of like it's like the word player, kind of. I think. You know?
Basically.
So that's Chang. He's on the left side, and then Eng was more of an evening in with a good book kind of person. He liked chess, and he was more studious and intellectual. This made them dislike each other. They didn't like having to engage with each other's interests all the time, and they resented their forced proximity. This kind of comical distaste with one another was eaten up by local papers, with the Philadelphia Medical Times reporting, what Chang liked to eat, Eng detested. Eng was very good-natured. Chang was cross and irritable. The sickness of one had no effect on the other, so that while one would be suffering from fever, the pulse of the other would beat at its natural rate. Chang drank pretty heavily at times, getting drunk, but Eng never felt any influence from the debauchery of his brother. They often quarreled, and of course, under circumstances, their quarrels were bitter. They sometimes came to blows, and on one occasion came under the jurisdiction of courts.
How would you do that in court? I'm so sorry.
I think you would probably have to put the. I'm not making fun of these people, but it's just you probably had to put the desks together.
You're ableist, dude.
No,
You're ableist, dude.
You had to have the prosecution.
Damn. I set you up. I'm gonna be honest. I set you up.
You did. You set me up to sound really bad. I'm not saying it as a joke. It would just.
Because you could have just hit me with a I don't know. And that would have worked. It really would have worked.
I'm sorry. I love accessibility. I was thinking about how we can make the courtroom more accessible.
You love accessibility. Okay. All right, man. Hasn't shown that during the podcast, but all right.
Oh, anyway.
Leave this in, by the way.
What'd you say? Leave it on fucking whatever, man. Through this exploitation of Chang and Eng, Josephine and Tom Thumb, as well as hundreds of other freak show attractions, Barnum became wealthy and, shockingly, often shared his wealth with those he exhibited. It's one of the reasons I think history remembers Barnum a bit more fondly than other exploitation artists. For example, Chang and Eng became so wealthy that they actually ended up purchasing an entire plantation in North Carolina, each of them taking a wife, producing 21 children, taking care of them, and also owning dozens of slaves. Barnum had freely allowed them to walk when their contract was up, and he had enriched them to do so. I don't really think it was necessarily out of good nature that Barnum did this. I think he just understood that show business was fickle, and there was no point in throwing money at an act that would be popular forever. So it was better to pay them a lot up front and then let them walk. While Barnum's freak show exhibits were his bread and butter, he couldn't resist his nature of engaging with practical jokes at the same time. This penchant for fraud was a double-edged sword for Barnum, bolstering his notoriety for paying customers. One day, he advertised a mysterious new oddity, which patrons lined up for hours in advance to see. Once they entered the museum, they found an empty sack on a table with a sign underneath labeled, "The cat let out of the bag." Barnum also conducted larger-scale hoaxes outside of the museum, and he immediately took credit for the fact that they were a scam after it was revealed. That was the point. He'd advertise, exaggerate, and fake his attractions, but he would put on a hell of a show as he was doing it, which usually was enough for those people attending to laugh at the fact that they'd been duped, rather than resent it. Usually involved him advertising a strange-looking animal as a unique wonder of the world, when in reality it was a simple genetic defect, was malnourished, or simply had some kind of ridiculous backstory surrounding it that had been embellished by Barnum or made up entirely. They didn't always work, and some attractions were received more poorly than others, but it didn't matter. Even the failures got people talking, and that's all Barnum needed.
Damn. Dude, he's so smart, and I hate it. Because I don't want him to be smart. Well, it doesn't matter because it happened in the past. I wasn't even born yet. But it's like I don't want him to be smart, but he's already lived. So
what if he dupes me? What if he
What if he comes after me? That's the fear I have every morning. I wake up and I'm like, P.T. Barnum could come and get me.
He is like, there is it is shocking to me that this is part of the reason that, and maybe I'll learn, because I haven't completely finished my research, maybe I'll learn this later on, but I don't understand why he is not as well known as someone like Walt Disney, right? Because he did create a corporation. That's what he's doing right now. He has an entire corporation with departments and everything, and he's one of the first to do it when it comes to American entertainment. So that's one of the reasons I was so interested in this, is like, this guy kind of created our industry in its Americanized form. It's kind of weird that we don't, I knew nothing about him. I think we talked the last episode. You don't really know anything about him either. So strange that he kind of exists and had such a great impact at its time, but his legacy is not as strong as some other installments of American history. Anyway, in the few years following these freak shows and hoaxes, Barnum and his museum were becoming a permanent installment of American culture. They were more popular than they'd ever been. However, they were popular for their grotesque nature, for the most part. Barnum was growing tired of being known only for his freaks and his hoaxes. He was cultured now. He had traveled the world. He had met all kinds of influential people, artists. He had met royalty. He had met musicians. Anyone that you could ever want to meet in his era, he had bumped elbows with. And he desired to be seen as a purveyor of taste, someone who belonged with these people. Someone who would be known for exhibiting things that were fun to gawk at, sure, but also things that had artistic merit. And he had his eyes on the perfect target to achieve this goal. Jenny Lind was a Swedish singer that Barnum was intimately familiar with, despite having never seen or heard her. But what he had heard was how beloved she was across the world. Shortly after his visit to England with Tom Thumb, Barnum had heard stories of how all across Europe, Jenny Lind had earned 25 curtain calls in a single show. Spectators after shows had unharnessed horses from her carriage, so they could instead have the honor of pulling her. And students had ripped apart her bed sheets at a hotel she had left for souvenirs.
She's her.
She is. She actually is.
Yeah.
Yes, she was 29 years old, internationally acclaimed, and papers have dubbed her the Swedish Nightingale. She was a pop star in the 1800s. She was genuinely a pop star.
Oh my God.
Which is really interesting because, like I said earlier, I didn't realize this level of celebrity like existed back then. I didn't know that like the celebrity culture was like a thing to this level where like this is like Taylor Swift behavior. This is like straight up like you would go, you'd see people like clamoring outside her hotel, following her around. Like she's got paparazzi following her. It's unreal.
And I bet they're all weird men. I'm sorry. Like
so like there is a story later. We'll get into it. I'll mention it when they're weird men. It is mostly men. It is her audience is mostly
weird men.
Barnum knew that attempting to contract Lind's services would be one of his biggest challenges yet. She was not a vulnerable, impoverished person. She was an international superstar who was independently successful. Most of his exhibits thus far had been either owned by others and he had purchased them from them, or, as I said before, they'd been poor or vulnerable people who had jumped at the opportunity for him to throw some money at them. Contracting Lind would be a gamble because her price would come at a premium. Lind had not gained much of a reputation in America either, so she was just a European sensation. If Barnum paid her a handsome amount and that fervor did not carry over to American audiences, he'd be out on his biggest investment ever. But he was willing to do it because the most valuable thing to him right now was shedding his reputation as just a vulgar purveyor of sensationalist entertainment. He said about this investment into Lind later in his book, "The public is a very strange animal. And although a good knowledge of human nature will generally lead a career of amusements to hit the people, they are fickle and oft-times perverse. A slight misstep in the management of a public entertainment frequently wrecks the most promising enterprise." But he was still willing to risk it, and Barnum sent a representative named Wilson to England to meet with Jenny Lind, who is currently on tour there. He promised Wilson a hefty reward if he secured Lind's services. However, when Wilson arrived in England for this meeting, he found that Lind had already moved to her next touring location in Germany. Greatly distraught at this, he pulled out a tab of Barnum's personal stationery and wrote Lind a letter with Barnum's offer: $1,000 a night, or a percentage of each show's ticket sales for up to 150 total shows. This letter was lucky to catch Lind at the perfect time. Her current options were to either perform in Berlin or Russia, and neither was an offer that she was necessarily excited to do. She wrote back to Wilson to come visit her in Lubeck, Germany, and the two talked details. Barnum had been correct about his reputation as a pervert, essentially. Not a sex pervert, but a pervert nonetheless. When other potential moguls got news that Barnum was attempting to negotiate with Jenny Lind, they wrote to her warning her of his dishonesty. One competing businessman said Barnum would, quote, put her in a box and exhibit her throughout the country for 25 cents a head. To be fair, that's kind of what he did with everybody else. So the guy was not wrong.
They were kind of right.
So this reputation that followed Barnum kind of scared Lind. It made her cautious. But America was a desirable target to her, and she was trying to make a lot of money in a short amount of time so she could retire and enrich charities that she believed in back home.
She's such a good person.
She's a really good, you'll find, yeah, she is probably like his other quote unquote freak shows. Obviously they come from pretty destitute situations, so they aren't always the most morally admirable people. Jenny Lind is like a really good, she's like a fucking Mother Teresa type figure. She's really charitable, which we'll see later. So she gets a little bit scared of Barnum's reputation, but she wants to come to America. So she wrote one of Barnum's associates in England whom she trusted, who assured her that Barnum was a man of good character when it came to taking care of his acts financially. She also had taken note that when Wilson had written her, Barnum's stationery included a picture of his mansion on it. And she realized that if Barnum could afford this mansion, he clearly had some kind of business acumen and was likely good on his offer of $1,000 a night. She also was happy that Barnum was offering her a flat rate. This was no risk to her whatsoever. She would just accept the contract and get paid no matter what happened. She met with Wilson and they inked a contract together. It was $150,000 for 150 shows, with the option to opt out after 75 shows if she decided that this trip was not for her. All expenses paid. including a maid, a valet, a secretary, and expenses for a friend to travel with her and stay with her. She also was allowed to sing for charity whenever she pleased, and would be bringing along a composer and pianist and baritone singer to accompany her on stage.
Jesus Christ.
On January 9th, 1950, Barnum paid $187,500 in total to Jenny Lind and all of her expenses, which equated to about $7.7 million for 150 shows in today's money.
She's her, so yeah.
She is her. She is her. This is a huge investment. By far, Barnum's biggest investment, too. It actually was such a big investment that he almost was not able to pay it. He did not have the cash assets up front to do so. And he got denied a bunch of loans for this because it was a very speculative investment. Even though he had a good reputation in the financial industry, several banks did not give him the loan. He finally found an investment firm that knew about Jenny Lind and was willing to finance the majority of the bill. He had to sell some of his personal property, and he also got a small loan from a friend to pay Lind to come to America. Barnum got a little stage fright after paying Lind and decided he wanted to do a little heat check of Lind's popularity in America. As he boarded his next train for business, he lobbed the question at the train's conductor. He said, "What do you think about Jenny Lind? Have you ever heard of her?" The conductor replied, "Jenny Lind? Who is she, a dancer?" Barnum's blood ran ice cold. The American public was entirely ignorant of Lind's stardom, and he had 8 months to educate them before Lind's first show went live. It was about to be his most aggressive marketing blitz ever in his career, and he was an expert at it, but it was going to be tough. First came the newspaper articles, where Barnum advertised Lind as a near mythical creature on February 22nd, 1850. In the paper, it read, "Perhaps I may not make any money by this enterprise, but I assure you that if I knew I should not make a farthing profit, I would ratify the engagement. So anxious am I that the United States should be visited by a lady whose vocal prowess have never been approached by any other human being, and whose..." Sorry, this is hard to read. In my little prompter.
You're getting close to the camera.
It's a picture of a book, and it's like hard to read. My reading comprehension is good. I just can't read it.
You're getting really close to me, dude, and I'm like backing up further.
He said, "Her character is charity, simplicity, and goodness personified. Miss Lind has numerous better offers than this one, and she is accepted from me, but she has great anxiety to visit America. She speaks of this country and its institutions in the highest terms of praise, and as money in by no means the greatest inducement that can be laid before her, she is determined to visit us. In her engagement with me, which includes Havana, she expressly reserves the right to give charitable concerts whenever she thinks proper. Since her debut in England, she has given to the poor from her own private purse more than the whole amount which I have engaged to pay her. And the proceeds of concerts for charitable purposes in Great Britain, where she is sung gratuitously, have realized more than 10 times that amount." So he's really talking her up. The public also agreed. They received his letter warmly, and anticipation grew even further when Barnum acquired a romanticized portrait of her from a Swedish artist, which he blasted in every paper he possibly could. Periodicals and handbills all sported Lind's face. Barnum's final act of marketing was to get the public swept up in a fervor over a lyric contest, where hundreds of poets submitted lyrics welcoming Lind to America with a $200 reward on the line. Around noon on September 1st, 1850, Lind's ship finally approached port, 8 months after the contract was inked. Barnum ecstatically boarded a rowboat and was transported out to the vessel, where he greeted the Swedish nightingale with a bouquet of flowers. When he first met her, he grabbed her hand and confessed to her that he had never seen or heard her, but that he trusted her reputation more than his own judgment. With that, the vessel approached port to thousands of people ashore, welcoming Lind to her American tour. 5,000 people awaited her at the house she was staying in, and she actually required a police escort to get her from the port to the house. The crowd remained there all night. They did not leave. The next day, reporters crowded the home. Celebrities and politicians called on Lind for personal visits, and the crowd outside grew larger and larger and larger. This emboldened Barnum. He felt good about his investment, even though a single show had not been performed. He saw an opportunity to improve his relationship with the singer and ensure her loyalty to him. He offered not only the $1,000 fixed rate to her, he then said after he made $5,500 in a single night, all profit after that point would be split 50-50 between him and Lind. Lind was flabbergasted and immediately accepted, stating she'd sing for a, quote, gentleman of honor like Barnum, anywhere in the world.
Okay.
However, she later disputed this down the line, saying she initiated the contract changes and she was the one that requested more money because of the fervor in America. But one of her attorneys said that this was the case. This was true, that she requested it. But Barnum was never resistant to any of these changes in the contract. He let Lind change it pretty much whenever she wanted, and he was happy to oblige. Soon after, rehearsals for Lind began at Castle Garden, an abandoned brick fortress on the water, which had been converted to an opera house. It had the most seating in the nation for opera shows, and critics attended these rehearsals, with reviews unanimously being positive. One read, "On the eve of the Nightingale's debut, we speak soberly, seriously, calmly. The public expectation has run very high for the last week, higher than at any former period of our past musical annals. But high as it has risen, this reality, the fact, the concert, the voice, and the power of Jenny Lind will far surpass all past expectation. Jenny Lind is a wonder and a prodigy in song. And no mistake." A public auction was then held for tickets to the first show, with hundreds driving up the price of to be the very first person to purchase the ticket. Barnum had made a deal already, though, in this auction. Have you seen Uncut Gems, Blizz?
Uncut Gems.
Uncut Gems.
Have I seen Uncut Gems? Let's just assume yes. I feel like I can't even confidently tell you. But I do this thing where I watch YouTubers watch a movie, and that's the problem. Like I'm currently
They give you the synopsis?
I know I'm currently watching a YouTuber watch Twisters right now. And I can't even tell you, like, I haven't seen Twisters, but like I could tell you what happens in Twisters because I see the snippets
from the YouTube video.
It's like speed running. It's like spark noting like a movie.
That's so awesome. So in Uncut Gems, right? There's a scene where Adam Sandler is like trying to sell this gem he has, and so he gets one of his family members to drive up the bid. So
yes,
yes, Barnum kind of does this. He has this neighbor who owns a hat shop next to his museum. And he tells his neighbor, he's like, look, no matter how much you got to bid, you should bid it up because the amount of fame and acclaim you're going to gain is going to pay off for you. And your shop is going to get tons of sales. You should absolutely pay as much as you possibly can. So he does. He drives up the bid, and the first ticket to this concert sells for $225. Which is like $9,300. That is more than Taylor Swift tickets, which is unreal. Like that is nuts. But it worked. Barnum was right. This guy sold 10,000 more hats over the next year than he had the previous year, and his name was printed in every newspaper. After that sale, the average price of tickets was between $6 and $7, which was about $250 to $290 in today's money. The concert was then held on September 11th, 1950, with a force of 60 policemen guiding traffic and securing the venue as Lind was preparing to perform. It was decorated beautifully. Every seat was filled, with 7/8 of the attendees being men, and an air of anticipation hung in the air as thick as molasses.
Man.
Now, what's interesting
did she perform Never Enough? Or?
Yeah. What's interesting about this is
spotlights. So good.
I don't think I know that song. Who sings that? Who sings that?
That's literally that's Jenny Lind is I don't know who sings it, but like it's Jenny Lind's song when she sings
it is?
Never Enough.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, no, in the musical.
Wait, what music? Oh, in P.T. Barnum, the Greatest Showman. That movie fucking sucked.
Jenny Lind is the Greatest Showman. I'm pretty sure.
That's it. Yes, she is. I remember it now. That shit is fucking ass. That movie was so bad. Yes. I remember. Yes. Anyway, yeah, I think it's a real song though. That one, I think.
Well, yeah, I think it's for the musical. Yes.
Yes, yeah.
I don't think Jenny Lind back then.
No, I don't think she sung that iteration. I think it might have been named the same thing, but I don't think that's what the song sounded like. She was an opera singer. The interesting thing.
This could be opera.
I guess you could maybe look. Maybe I don't know. There's no recordings. That's for sure.
Music analysts, let us know in the comments.
Music analysts. And you know anything about Jenny Lind's songs and their enduring legacy in America? Let me know. What's interesting about her is like men are obsessed with her, right? With her. And you would expect that means that she was probably conventionally attractive. According to Barnum, she really wasn't. She was a pretty
Damn.
average looking person. And you actually hear this description quite frequently about her. She was apparently not very conventionally attractive. She wasn't
jealous. He was jealous.
ugly per se, but she was just kind of a plain looking woman from the accounts that I've seen.
He was jealous and he wanted her, and she was like, I don't want you. I'm good. I got
remember
money.
in the book, the guy who this book was written in 1950. So the dude, he was using some real problematic language in parts of the book. He called some of the freak shows, he called them what did he call cretins of horror or something. And I'm like, oh, this guy sucks. Even in this part of the book, he said Barnum, he basically, I can't remember the exact words, but he said Barnum was an old, balding, fat man looking back at her. So she probably thought the same. Anyway, still has a lot of the male gaze on her because of her beautiful singing voice. So she goes on stage. After a 60-piece orchestral opening act, 5,000 eager ticket holders waited for her to emerge. She comes out and she puts on the performance of a lifetime. She earned 3 curtain calls and even a chant for Barnum to come on stage for a speech.
Oh, okay.
Before the show, Lind had privately conferred with Barnum that she had been appalled by how much the tickets had been selling for, and that she was going to commit the entirety of her first paycheck to charity. Barnum revealed this in his speech, and to even further applause. The next day, papers called Lind, quote, the greatest singer we have ever heard, and she donated over $10,000 to charity that night.
Oh my God.
In the following months, Barnum took Lind on a national tour with receipts for tickets ranging from $50,000 to $150,000 every night. Fans flocked around the Nightingale's hotel windows, followed her from show to show like groupies, and even the current president, Millard Fillmore, came to greet her. Yes, it is definitely 100% kind of weird. It is like Stan behavior.
I also I'm not a fan of people traveling with the artist to shows sometimes.
I agree.
This is a hot take, and I don't mean it to be a hot take because I know the K-pop community is so different. But we need to save our monies. Just save your money. It's not worth it. You can see them once and you've seen them. So
get a job. Get a job. I'm fully on board with this. You need to get a fucking job.
I'm not saying that. K-pop community, you can actually go after him. Don't come after me.
No, I'm not talking about the K-pop community. K-pop, you're fine. I fear them. They're fine. They're chill.
I fear them.
Taylor Swift fans, get a job. Thank you.
Taylor Swift fans, please get a job.
Yes, you guys need a job. I'm sorry. I don't know. Chapel Roan fans, I'll give you guys a pass. You guys are fine. But Taylor Swift, get a job.
They're mentally ill they baristas.
+2.
They're fine.
Correct. They are making my coffee, and I don't mean that derogatorily. I mean they are making the best coffee ever. They are. They're fucking. We need them, and they should get paid a livable wage. I fucking love coffee. Anyway, while Lind and Barnum had their ups and downs throughout the tour, they became close and were business partners and friends. The tour was a wild success, with Barnum's $170,000 investment grossing him $535,000 and Lind an additional $177,000 on top of her original fixed contract.
Too much money.
That was $712,000 in total over this course of the tour, which equates to $30 million in today's currency. Unreal.
Can I hold $1?
Yeah, honestly. At this point, Barnum had achieved both of his current goals: make as much money as possible and become a purveyor of art and culture at a little bit of a higher level than he was currently known for. He was richer than he'd ever been, but this was just a taste of what was to come next.
Oh, is that it?
That's it.
Okay,
that's it.